I think we have it. I think we have decadence, the disease of the eye. I'm no doctor, but if I were going to diagnose Western society right now, I would say that decadence, the disease of decadence, is definitely one of the main contenders of like why we seem to be falling apart. Hey tchotchkes, welcome back to another episode of the Cha-Cha Beat. Are we too sexy? Like, too sexy for our own good? Because in 2025, the relationship between men and women is like not so hot. If you've been watching the Cha-Cha Beat podcast, you know I am obsessed with the statistic that by 2030, 45% of women will be single. On top of this trend of strong and independent women, you've got the red pill, online red pill movement, and men going their own way, and passport bros. We have all of these women who are saying, I don't need a man, and all of these men saying, well, I don't need a woman, or at least I don't need a Western woman. I can get a passport and go over here and live my best traditional life. The sexes aren't talking to each other. They're actually strategizing how they can be apart. And this is not a good way to be if we want Western society to not only continue, but actually thrive and continue to create and conceptualize the great brilliance that the West has brought thus far to the world. So you might even say that we are in desperate need of a hero, someone who can actually talk some sense into men and women and can talk to men in a way that they feel respected as men and talk to women in a way that they feel respected as women. And for that, I can see why Camille Paglia is so popular. Her voice really just like hits ya. And that's what we need. We need someone who can actually speak to men and women so that they can hear. So today, in a quest of truth, today we are going to talk about sexual personae, the art and decadence from Nefertiti to Emily Dickinson. This is the culture-rocking exposé by the popular contemporary feminist and scholar Camille Paglia. Starting from chapter 1, like this book has it all. It's got sex, violence, art, love, drama. So in preparation for this video, I read the book, not the whole thing, the first chapter, which is what we're going to be talking about today. You can see my notes from just the first chapter. And then to start organizing my own thoughts, I watched another YouTube video, and since we're talking about sex here, I thought it might be good to have a man in the chat. So I've cut and spliced in some edits from Better Than Food, and we'll be seeing him throughout the video.
Better Than Food, man.
All right, before we get into it, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Tchotchkes, we are going places. We are not here to just lose our minds to doom scrolling and Insta comparing. Here to think about things and talk about things and dare to say what needs to be said. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Part 1, the Amuse Bouche. Let's start by talking about the preface. Don't worry, it's only one page. The preface pretty much establishes Paglia as like the hero that our Western world needs. She knows all of our flaws, and yet she still believes in our potential. The book accepts canonical Western tradition and rejects the modernist idea that culture has collapsed into meaningless fragments. It kind of feels like our culture has collapsed into meaningless fragments, doesn't it? Paglia believes that there's hope for us. We may be on the way to becoming meaningless fragments, but all hope is not lost. Perhaps we can save Western society, because it does feel as if we are being so fragmented from each other and everything is meaningless. And now men and women aren't even finding each other. Women are fragmented from men and vice versa. And like, what's the point? Where are we going? We're going nowhere is the point. With that notion of meaningless fragments and the temptation that all is not lost, I think that we can consider our bouches amused. The last thing that I want to mention is just like this actually was a treat to read. Paglia is a prolific writer. She is a rebellious philosopher, and she is a woman who is not afraid to shock with the messy truth. Before we dive into chapter 1, Better Than Food, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Sexual Personae is the magnum opus of the American academic Camille Paglia. It's a collection of 24 essays, mostly fusing art history and literature with social criticism and psychology. It's also a defense of the achievements of Western culture and the men and the masculine energies responsible for them. It's also a scathing attack on progressivist idealism and modern feminism. Don't get it wrong though, she's very pro-sex. She's pro-gay, she's pro-porn, she's pro-sex, etc. She has a lot of traditionally left-leaning attributes. She's just not crazy.
Before we get distracted with all the sex talk, make sure, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I hope that I'm providing quality content for all my tchotchkes out there, trying to learn as I go, branch out from just doing like reaction videos to actually exploring something and deepening our minds and understanding of our culture. If you are down to think a little bit with the cha-cha beat, then like this video and subscribe to the channel. Okay, let's get into the juicy stuff. Part 2, Too Sexy for This Song. Paglia starts chapter 1 with laying down the facts, like just in case there's any confusion on who or what is in charge, she is letting us know. Spoiler alert, it ain't us. Better Than Food, could you please introduce us to sex and violence, or nature and art?
In the beginning was nature, the background from which and against which our ideas of God were formed. Nature remains the supreme moral problem. We cannot hope to understand sex and gender until we clarify our attitude toward nature. Sex is a subset to nature. Sex is the natural in man. Society is an artificial construction, a defense against nature's power. Without society, we would be storm-tossed on the barbarous sea that is nature. Society is a system of inherited forms reducing our humiliating passivity to nature. We may alter these forms, slowly or suddenly, but no change in society will change nature. We are merely one of a multitude of species upon which nature indiscriminately exerts its force. Nature has a master agenda we can only dimly know.
Thank you, Better Than Food. So, nature doesn't give a shit about our feelings. Nature is cruel and unpredictable, and to live by nature alone would be a wretched existence, not to mention like a short existence. So, to combat this reality, man conceived of and constructed society, which is like his main defense against nature. His secondary defense against nature is religion and the tradition and the prescription that help to distract him from the ambiguity of not knowing what was going on. It gave him kind of a frame of reference of why things were happening, so it didn't seem so chaotic and random. And through traditions and repetition, that was something that man could control. And thus he felt better about ultimately like being out of control because nature is in charge, not us. Civilized life requires a state of illusion. Without it, culture would revert to fear and despair. But Paglia is quick to tell us, to remind us that this illusion can only go so far. She even suggests that free will itself may even be just an illusion, because at the end of the day, no matter what society we erect or what religion we subscribe to, there is always going to be an undetectable force of nature moving through us that is driven namely by our sex. Sex is the point of contact between man and nature, where morality and good intentions fall to primitive urges. Sex cannot be understood because nature cannot be understood. Science is a method of logical analysis of nature's operations, but science is always playing catch-up ball. Nature breaks its own rules whenever it wants. Science cannot avert a single thunderbolt. And because sex is essentially this uncontrollable natural phenomenon. Paglia claims that the more that we're focusing on sex and displaying sexuality throughout our culture, the more we're actually becoming confused in society, because society is all about control and sexuality cannot be controlled. Sexuality is a murky realm of contradiction and ambivalence. Eroticism is mystique, the aura of emotion and imagination around sex. A modern assumption is that sex and procreation are medically, scientifically, intellectually manageable. If we keep tinkering with the social mechanism long enough, every difficulty will disappear. But sexuality cannot be fixed by codes of social or moral convenience, whether from the political left or right, for nature's fascism is greater than that of any society. So Paglia has pretty much set the stage here. Basically, we've gotten to this point of Western culture where we're pretty advanced, and we've gotten this advanced by essentially defying nature. We have thus gotten a little cocky in that. And Paglia's point is that at the end of the day, nature is going to nature, and there's really nothing we can do about it. Which, in a world where you are being told at least once a week that a man can become a woman, this was just so refreshing to hear or to read. At the same time, you can't believe how bold she is for saying all this, and at the same time you're like I can't even believe that this is controversial, because it is so it just is, because nature is, whether we like it or not. This essay, Paglia takes no prisoners. Better than food? What do you think?
To call her a provocateur is an understatement and implies a diminutive nuisance. Paglia is a force of nature, an intellectual volcano.
Part 3. Camille Paglia knows good sex. Even though she's talking about sex and all of these taboo subjects that go with it, she has a way of just elevating this provocative conversation to almost like a poetic prose that really just string together as if it's just a stream of consciousness. But also everything is sourced and cited, and her brilliance of reading this was just beholden on the page. Paglia definitely did her research for this book. She cites cultures from around the globe, throughout history, presenting human nature through a chronological and geographical context that reorients you in history with the evolution of Western culture and Western society that we have here in America. She references literature, art history, psychology, religion, Greek mythology, Buddhism, Shakespeare, the Bible.
Every single line in this chapter feels like you're getting punched in the face by an intellectual Conor McGregor.
It was also impressive just how much her conviction just came through the page. It was almost as if reading this chapter, it was almost as if she was saying it all in one breath. Her typing fingers couldn't really keep up with her train of thought as she was writing this.
It's it really just flows from one idea to the next. It's very serpentine. It's very Medusa's head, right? You're just looking at all these beautiful, gorgeous snakes just writhing on her face and shit, and then she turns you to stone, and then you're like, fuck! No, it's amazing. It does stop you in your tracks. It is kind of Medusa-like. You just read this book and you're just oh, I'm made of stone.
Her writing was thick but titillating, academic but also rebellious. She's coming at you from every direction, but it's totally controlled. Non-linear yet logical and totally captivating. Part 4. Sex and the City. Today's modern culture is the most advanced civilization of known history. Perhaps that's why, since the beginning of the modern era, we have operated on the audacity that it is possible to outthink nature. Paglia takes us through the history leading up to the 20th century Western society. We go back to Minoa, Crete, which was the last known female matriarchy society that fell around, I think it was wiped out around 1100 BC. In place of that, we have the emergence of the Mycenaean wars, the warrior culture that eventually led to the Greeks and the Apollonian culture of ancient Greece. And then we also have the Roman culture that became like the Judeo-Christian Roman culture in Italy. The framework of how we think in our relationship to the world and God and nature and society, all of these things, it all kind of goes back to our Greco-Roman roots. And the thing about both the Greeks and the Romans is they both kind of had a hierarchical view of what, life, earth, nature was. So we've got like us down here, and then there's the ethereal, transcendental realm of like where the gods or the spirits or just one god resides in the heavens. I know I'm giving you like a very cursory overview. I read it, I totally understood it. It's not hard to read, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a mouthful. She's an expert on it for a reason that she can just summarize it so succinctly. So I do recommend you to read the book. I'm not here to like do your homework for you. I'm here to have a conversation about what it is that I just read, we all just read. In this brief overview, you can still kind of get the idea. Man kind of divides consciousness into what we can control and what we cannot control. And what we can control is the spiritual realm that we conceive of. And what we cannot control is the craziness that is Earth, up until like modern times when we feel like we have a general idea of like what nature is and we can predict things, but at the same time, like it kicks our asses like all the time. Even like recently, we got floods, we got fires. Nature can do whatever she wants and we know it and it's terrifying. So anyway, our whole Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian roots kind of lead up to this way of thinking. But I don't want to get like too distracted on that because the whole point of saying all of that is to then say, Paglia then brings this concept back to the paradigm of sex. And because I'm getting like tripped up on all of my words for this, I'm just going to let Better Than Food explain this part.
Apollonian and Chthonian, sky and swamp as she refers to them. Sky of bright order and progress and achievement. Swamp of death, chaos, disintegration, liquid decay and corrosion. Male fascist, brute force, phallic Apollonian logic, right? Math. Female Chthonian dark, swampy chaos mother, who we all return to, by the way, all-encompassing, solipsistic, self-contained. The great evil bitch mother nature. Impossible to escape her clutches.
Okay, so kind of a tangent, but like if Earth is the woman archetype, this kind of makes me think, and we're talking about ancient Greece, this makes me think about astrology. And astrology is so don't mention astrology in the red manosphere because they'll just like laugh and mock you. And it's like deemed a pseudoscience by astronomy. But perhaps there's something to astrology if the forces of the earth, the nature that we live in is affecting us, as Paglia will go on to discuss. Like, what about the forces of the other planets? And Mars is definitely masculine, as is Saturn, Father Time. But what about Venus? Venus is definitely a woman. What of these forces of nature are we ignoring in modern culture that we are just, flipping off as if, oh, that's silly, that's just, run from a girl that is interested in astrology? You can come for me in the comments about how stupid astrology is, but I don't know, this is just making me think that maybe if we paid attention to the forces of nature a little bit more, maybe I'm just desperate because things are like really starting to fall apart. Back to Sex and the City. Society is starting to flourish, and we have the modern era of the Judeo-Christian religions doing the impossible. They subverted the sexually explicit pagan religions of our past and brought the masses a moral code that revolutionized high society. Paglia definitely spends time in this essay expressing her appreciation and gratitude and awe of like the Western culture, Western society. This essay is in part like an homage to the West and like the new levels of brilliance that it has brought to civilization. Paglia does not like gloss over her reverence of the West. We're gonna gloss over them because, you know, we can't talk about everything, but she is in awe and appreciation of everything that has come from Western society. But we're here to talk about sex. So let's get back to the truth of the matter, which is that, you know, it doesn't matter how much we name or categorize or math or logic or any great brilliant invention or convenience that comes from man's mind, we will never be fully in control because nature. We can construct walls, we can assign laws, we can like curb like the constants of nature. We've figured out like the predictability element of it all. So we can like keep nature at bay. But the truth is that no amount of social structure or anarchy will defy the laws of nature, which we all live by whether we like it or not. Paglia is like a libertarian and a feminist. However, she also recognizes the like necessity of a strong society that has moral guidelines. This essay goes into like the importance of those moral guidelines because it can't just be chaos. We're slipping into that, and we'll get to all of this. But like the answer is not total liberation or total government fascism. Like no matter what we do, we are to a certain extent out of control because of our human nature. Next thing in our Sex and the City episode, oh my goodness, all of a sudden it's 1762 when Rousseau is writing the Social Contract, which asserted that man is free and everywhere he is in chains. In other words, people should be allowed to do and live as ever they please, and the rules of society are stifling. Rousseau was one of the like first modern liberalist philosophers. The philosophy of Rousseau is known to have thus led to the Reign of Terror in France, which, you know, look up the Reign of Terror. It was, as the name suggests, it's not good. But Rousseau's main point is that, you know, man should be free to act at his will, at his nature, and we don't need the rules of society like keeping us down. You might say that while, you know, Judeo-Christian religions, like they have their fault because they just kind of like choose to repress the whole like sexual nature fact of it all. You know, we've got the Immaculate Conception, and they're just more or less like in denial of the fact that this is not only a necessary but an unavoidable power that runs through us. So they're just trying to repress it over here. But then the Rousseau and the liberal movement comes in and they're pretty much just gonna like ignore it altogether. Like that is not a problem. Don't worry about it. Like we'll be fine. Just like let the people loose. Like people are fucking animals. They just are. We are nature. We are mammals. Survival of the fittest, Darwin creatures. So then Paglia brings us back to the 20th century by connecting Rousseau's liberal concepts to modern feminism today. Or at least modern feminism in the 1990s when Paglia was writing this. Feminists grossly oversimplify the problem of sex when they reduce it to a matter of social convention, readjust society, eliminate sexual inequity, purify sex roles, and happiness and harmony will reign. Feminists seeking to drive power relations out of sex has set themselves against nature. In other words, sex is where the city meets the real world. And the real world is not the illusion of civility, but the carnal, violent, and erotic will of nature. The city, not like New York City, but like civilization, the city is what saves us from ourselves. Sexual freedom, sexual liberation, a modern delusion. We are hierarchical animals. Sweep one hierarchy away and another will take its place, perhaps less palatable than the first. There are hierarchies in nature and alternate hierarchies in society. In nature, brute force is the law. It's survival of the fittest. In society, there are protections for the weak. Society is a frail barrier against nature. When the prestige of state and religion is low, men are free, but they find freedom intolerable and seek new ways to enslave themselves, through drugs or depression. Romanticism always turns into decadence. Nature is a hard taskmaster. And then Paglia pretty much spends the rest of the chapter delivering a raw, real, and radical takedown of all of these all too human romantic ideas. This essay, Sex and Violence, or Nature and Art, is like an expose ahead of its time. Like, this is just cuts through all of the noise and confusion. It's just like a giant truth bomb in the middle of all of this sexual ambiguity that we seem to have in our culture today. Sex is nature, and you cannot change or control nature. If you disagree, I dare you to read this essay in full. If you are interested in reading Sex and Violence, or Nature and Art, for yourself, I have included a free PDF, or I've linked to a free PDF in the description. And while you're down there on my page, please like this video. I put a lot of work into this video to put together this content for you, so I would really appreciate it if you like it. And if you do genuinely like it, please subscribe to my channel so that you will never miss a beat. Part 5. Art history is sexy. Paglia dedicates multiple pages of this essay to the single focus, concentration, and projection of Western men. She argues that the single focus of survival, despite nature, that through this, man has conceptualized math, language, cities, laws, and, of course, art. The most effective weapon against the flux of nature is art. To deal with the chaos around him and inside of him, man creates art. The artist makes art not to save humankind, but to save himself. Art is an expression of anxiety, a pausing of chaos, momentary order captured on the canvas or screen, a suspension of reality, a sacred place. But to Paglia, art is more than what meets the eye. Art is sacrificial, turning its inherent aggression against both the artist and representation. Literature's endless murders and disasters are there for contemplative pleasure, not moral lesson. Their status as fiction, removed into a sacred precinct, intensifies our pleasure by guaranteeing that contemplation cannot turn into action. Art is the expression of human nature, a merging of pain and pleasure. Art is also what connects us to our roving eye, that triggers the pagan instincts that, although Western society, Western culture has worked very hard to keep at bay, Paglia argues that these forces were never really purified out of society. They've been lurking underneath, and art is kind of the gateway into the nature of the human sex. And with that short lesson in art history, Paglia argues that the Judeo-Christian suppression of the roving eye of our pagan past, the cult of sexual decadence and decay, well, that suppression has pretty much failed, or at least it is failing as we explore modern day art. Part 6. Nature has flown the co-op. Our modern culture is image saturated. There is art, images everywhere. Society is losing to nature. It started in the 1950s when the television made its way into America's living room, and the sexy, alluring screen entrapped us into the fantasy. And then, sometime in the 1960s, an unknown madman uttered the famous words for the first time, "Sex sells." And so to Hollywood, the modern Rome. Cinema is sexual showing, a pagan flaunting. Plot and dialogue are obsolete word baggage. Cinema, the most eye-intense of genres, has restored pagan antiquities, cultic exhibitionism. Spectacle is a pagan cult of the eye. This essay was published as part of Camille Paglia's book, Sexual Personae, in 1990. And in the 1990s, movies, Hollywood was like everything. Everyone wanted to be the movie stars, and we would watch shows like Entertainment and Behind the Music. And the fact that Paglia recognized this pictorial hero worship tendencies that we have going towards cinema, and now knowing where we are now with where digital and image media is just in our pockets, and we're just constantly scrolling. Cinema is the culmination of the obsessive, mechanistic male drive in Western culture. The movie projector is an Apollonian straight shooter, demonstrating the link between aggression and art. Every pictorial framing is a ritual limitation, a barred precinct. The rectangular movie screen is clearly patterned on the post-Renaissance framed painting, but all conceptualization is a framing. Paglia refers to the cinema as machine of the gods. Man was able to project something that seemed so real but wasn't, and through that he could defy the laws of nature. One way that this would be is through costuming and makeup, not to mention controlling of the plot and the hero's journey to have a struggle but then be triumphant in the end. All of that is Western civilization, Western cinema, Western media art of man trying to exert his power over nature. And remember that art is a suspension of reality. The restraints of nature do not exist in art, and that fantasy can be intoxifying. You can see this by the progression of media between the 1950s and the 1990s, when Paglia was writing this essay, how things just kept getting a little bit sexier. And by 1999, the sexy genie was out of her bottle. Media, art today is just constant. It's coming from everywhere, from the convenience of streaming to scrolling, of just a constant stimulation of different images, triggering emotion and urges within us as we mindlessly are scrolling or watching. All of this decadent display of sex and curiosity has captured us into an entranced state of the fantasy, of the decadence. There is no such thing as a mere image. Western culture is built on perceptual relations. From the soaring god projections of the ancient sky cult to the celebrity-inflating machinery of the American commercial promotion, Western identity has organized itself around charismatic sexual personae of hierarchical command. Every god is an idol, literally an image. Today, the spectacle of the eye is not limited to the Hollywood screen. Every modern woman has become like a supermodel on her own phone. Paglia warns us or explains how there really is just no such thing as a mere image. This focus on the package, the sexual allure of things, not the reality of what is underneath, but that focus on just the presentation of sex is now really what's in charge of our culture, because at the end of the day, like, sex sells. And these women are online. I'm not saying like they are like explicitly selling sex. That's not what I'm saying. But, even just a dating profile, men too, like you have to put together like, professional grade images of like what you're putting forward, because like sex sells, figuratively, literally. And because sex sells, capitalism is a logical extension of art, as it allows artists to, sell the works that they have created through this pain, their insides, their imagination, like on this canvas. It allows them to sell it and maybe even make a living so that they could live off of this world of projection that they've created. But it also, then the person who buys it and can hang it on their wall, who maybe is not capable of painting like that, and that painting just really speaks to them and helps them feel some kind of control in this world of chaos. And so it's natural to want to sell art. It starts to get a little weird when the art that we're selling and the art that we're producing and the art that we're just, putting out there at mass without a second thought, we're just recording ourselves and putting it on the internet in this cinematastic display of modern media that we have. Every time we're doing that, perhaps we are not doing it in our best interest. Part 7, Death by Decadence. But art and media are just an illusion, things constructed by man. And as we continue to live in this culture that is more and more embracing the images of mass media, the more we're starting to identify with these fake or manufactured, imagined personalities that are not the reality of nothing of what we see of someone online is the full picture, because it is impossible to capture the full picture through art. You cannot stop nature or organize nature in a way that would ever truly project someone's fullness onto the screen. But we're so encaptured by these meaningless fragments of projection of love, of sex, of drama. It's causing issues in the real world because we're so wrapped up in the fantasy that reality is starting to get upset. Hardness of our personalities and the tension with which they are set off from nature have produced the West's vulnerability to decadence. Tension leads to fatigue and collapse. As I will show, decadence is a disease of the eye, a sexual intensification of artistic voyeurism. I think we have it. I think we have decadence, the disease of the eye. I'm no doctor, but if I were going to diagnose Western society right now, I would say that decadence, the disease of decadence, is definitely one of the main contenders of why we seem to be falling apart, and why such basic natural things that should be happening, men and women living in harmony as they have more or less throughout Western culture, these things are not happening because we are so confused and preoccupied with the fantasy of art. And thus it kind of seems like our society is starting to fall apart. Paglia published Sex and Violence, or Nature and Art, before the digital revolution transformed the way that we interact with media. Like I said, that was back in the day of Hollywood was Hollywood, separate. But now we've got big screen, flat screen TVs. We don't even go to the movie theaters anymore. And forget the TV. I've got a phone. I'm on social media. I don't need to envy a Hollywood actress because I am the main character in my own story that I'm projecting out into the world. When Camille Paglia wrote this essay, e-commerce was not a thing. No one was buying or selling anything online. And perhaps most significantly, this essay was written before Sex and the City aired on HBO in 1998. Modern media does not stop, and thus it kind of seems like art and sex have taken over. In other words, our society is too sexy. Sex is all we think about because it's all we see. From erotic music videos to concert crotch shots, from sex scenes in every movie to very revealing red carpet dresses, from TikTok to the club. In Western culture, sex is everywhere and everyone is pretty much naked. We have internalized turning ourselves into art and projecting ourselves on the screen. It is a little as if we're living in suspended imagination, where anything goes and natural consequences just don't exist. Today, our Western world is an illusion of art on steroids, and it is vacuum sucking us into the decadent realm of paganism. I mean, modern women, with the help of fashion and filters and their beauty routines, like they are accentuating their womanly ways in ways that are directed only to intrigue the sex of it all, and thus turning them into a sex object which will inevitably be worshipped because it's what we do. And all of this is actually kind of ironic because women have worked feminism. They have worked so hard to free themselves of the label of being called a sex object. But as it turns out, sex sells, and strong and independent women have no problem projecting their best assets as long as they're getting something in return. It's also ironic because women are using the exact modes of art that men have created to escape from nature, aka women. They are now using it to entrance man, not only in cinema, but in them as a walking physical human being. And this is essentially what is pissing off so many men in the red pill movement. They're in their online communities calling makeup sorcery. And it makes sense. Since the beginning of Western culture, defying nature has been a man's game. And now that man has made it to third base, women are coming in and saying, we're starting on third base. This is great. One of feminism's irritating reflexes is its fashionable disdain for patriarchal societies, to which nothing good is ever attributed. But it is patriarchal society that has freed me as a woman. It is capitalism that has given me the leisure to sit at this desk and write this book. Let us stop being small-minded about men and freely acknowledge what treasures their obsessiveness has poured into culture. But back to the sex of it all. Sex is everywhere. There's no moral code. Society has lost the reins to pop culture, and we are getting inundated with, no one is even allowed to say what a woman is anymore. No one can define a woman. I'll tell you, Camille Paglia can define a woman, and if you want to know what a woman is, read this essay. If you want to know what a man is, read this essay. We are surrounded by and consumed by sex. Sex is everywhere, but somehow no one is having sex. No one's getting married. We're not having families. We've actually managed to become oversexed and undersexed at the same time. With the onset of internet culture, sex has exploded onto the scene, and now everything is murky. Our vision is blurred between reality and art. Our minds have disconnected from the physicality of our bodies. We've forgotten that sex is nature, and nature doesn't give a shit about our feelings. Paglia, through her poetic prose in which she articulates the nature of a man and that of a woman, brings us back to the reality of our bodies. Do you have anything to say better than food about the state of decadence that we're in?
And we're so confused now because we're getting so many mixed messages. Both genders. It almost seems like somebody's trying to turn us against each other when we used to just, naturally get along. I remember those days, or at least I feel like I remember those days. Who knows? Maybe I just got older and everything got more complicated. But I don't think so. I think with the rise of technology and all this crap, I think we've entered a new era wherein we're just competing in the wrong ways. You know what I mean? It's not a question of somebody having more power than the other or somebody having too much power or too little power. It's the wrong kinds of power over each other. I mean, yeah, you know, capitalism, I get it. But capitalism, as she points out too, like emancipated women. Capitalism made it possible for women to become untethered from the necessity of men, right? So she's pro-capitalist in that respect, as I am too. But there are obvious problems.
Now that I think about it, I'm not even sure like capitalism like is the problem that we're trying to identify here. Perhaps there is like the greedy aspect of capitalism of, you know, always wanting to increase profits and build more and make more money. But I would say that in the situation of the West that we're in, it's monopolies and not capitalism that is like really like the big fish in this whole scheme. But monopoly is not the word I would use either. I think that consumerism is really the culprit that we're looking for. Supply and demand says that if we don't buy, they won't supply. But we buy things, all the pretty things that we need, all of the art, projections that we need to distract us from reality. We need things to keep us safe, to keep us grounded in this world of chaos. And so we worship at the altar of consumerism. But all this stuff, it's just a distraction. You know, vape smoke and Insta filters keeping us hooked in this pagan trance of decadence. Meanwhile, society is falling apart. Did he just say that they were doing it on purpose? 5 key takeaways from Sex and Violence or Nature and Art by Camille Paglia. 1. Sex is nature and we cannot control nature. Nature controls us. Men and women are different by nature. 2. Social constructs are necessary to establish order, man's greatest defense against the chaos of nature. Art is the necessary tool for the imagination to erotically explore outside the bounds of acceptable society. 3. With the rise of image-saturated modern media, Western culture is slipping into a decadent abyss of sex objects, sex acts, and sex selves. 4. With Insta filters, dating apps, IVF, birth control, selfies, and lives, we delude ourselves into thinking that we've finally done it. We have outsmarted and defied nature. We haven't. Try as we might to become gods and idols, nature will always be the boss. 5. Living according to the will of nature can be stressful. So we must resurrect and defend art for art's sake. Not for clout, but for contemplation. Not for selfies, but for self-reflection. Not to save society, but to save ourselves. Is Camille Paglia my new hero? Okay, so honest moment, I actually had never heard of Camille Paglia before I did a video that she was in like a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago at this point. I'll put a link to that video in the description and also in this video, so if you're interested, you can go check that out. I'm a little surprised that I've never heard of her, but also I'm not really surprised because I kind of live under a rock. So anyway, I'd never heard of her before, but that video did so well. It was like my best performing video to date. So in looking to what I was going to talk about next, I'm like, I should talk about Camille Paglia because she seems to be like super popular. And looking into like another video to react to, it kind of just snowballed into like, how can I even like really react to what she's saying if I don't know like the guiding principles of like her whole philosophy, like what she's all about. And then all of a sudden I was reading like a online free PDF of this chapter, like in the moment, just like started doing it. And before I knew it, I was like in deep with creating this episode. So needless to say that I find her quite fascinating. I am grateful to all of you tchotchkes who watched that video to like bring to my attention of how brilliant and revolutionary, but also like completely refreshing Camille Paglia's work is. So thank you, tchotchkes. You guys are so smart. She's got my attention. I am curious of where she's going to go from here. Chapter 2, the title is The Birth of the Western Eye. And that sounds pretty intriguing to me. So I do have the intention of reading chapter 2. Let me know, tchotchkes, if you are interested in me putting together a book recap of chapter 2. Did you like this kind of episode? Would you rather me just stick to the reaction videos of just like calling people out of being like stupid on the internet? I feel like this like took it like a level deeper of like, why are people being stupid on the internet, and like what can we do about it? And I guess at this point, the first thing that we can do about it is accept the fact that there are some things about us, like our sex, that we cannot change. And I would recommend anyone that is interested in this subject to read it. It's not super long. It's like 30 pages, the whole chapter. And it goes pretty quickly because, like I said, like she is just on a roll, and what she's talking about is quite titillating. So it's not like reading like a dry, boring academic stiff. No pun intended. Yeah, because we're talking about sex. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a second video of the second chapter of Camille Paglia's work, Sexual Personae. If you're like, oh my god, I like kind of feel like the episode is ending, it's starting to feel like it's over, and you like need more cha-cha and just like need to keep the beat going, click here to watch the first time that I ever brought Camille Paglia into the scene. It's a great video. It's like my most popular video. If you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Every little tap of your finger just means so much and really helps my channel and all of my creative aspirations. All right, tchotchkes, until next time, keep calm and cha-cha on.
Cha cha cha.